As we've touched briefly upon in past videos, Hal Jordan seemingly never became a Green Lantern in the main DCAU timeline.
Arkham had pudding every Thursday.
Hello, Watchtower Database, and welcome back to the Vanishing Point. Today, I finally get to tell James Strecker that he is wrong. Ever since we got teased with Hal Jordan wall art in Super Babes in the movie Batman and Harley Quinn, James and I have been arguing behind the scenes about where Hal Jordan lands in the DCAU continuity, whether he actually became a Green Lantern or that was a continuity error. Well, now that Justice League vs. Fatal 5 is here, the theorizing is over. Hal Jordan is a Green Lantern. But now that that 2 years argument has come to a conclusion, it's time to finally come out and say it. Friendship with James, over. Ted is best Watchtower Data Boy now. And Ted, you better not argue with me, or you won't like the consequences. But seriously though, this just raises so many questions. Going as far back as 2006, when Dwayne McDuffie was asked why Justice League Unlimited was lacking in the HAL department, he stated, "The one time we asked to use him, DC said yes. I have no interest in using him again, with the exception of one alternate universe story we talked seriously about doing this season but decided against. But I can't speak for Bruce and James. In my opinion, Hal Jordan never got the ring in the DCAU, except for briefly in an altered timeline during the Once and Future thing. Once Batman and John Stewart repaired the timeline, things went back to status quo. Hal Jordan is a test pilot who never got the ring." Of course, back in Superman the Animated Series episode In Brightest Day, we did get an Easter egg confirming Hal's status as a test pilot when we saw his name painted on the side of a plane at Broom Lake US Air Force Base. Broom Lake, of course, being a reference to Hal Jordan creator John Broome. But now that we know he's destined for greater things in this universe, the question is just when did he get the power ring? Well, I'm sure most of you may not be surprised, but we honestly don't have a lot to go off of for this. One of the first DCAU stories we got with Hal Jordan was actually in Adventures in the DC Universe #4, where it's confirmed that Hal was a Lantern before Kyle. However, the problem with this is that the same exact page shows Kyle's origins more closely to his comic book counterpart, where he gets the ring directly from the Guardians of Ola, rather than what we see in Superman the Animated Series, where he gets his ring from Avon Sur. Of course, from a real world perspective, this contradiction makes sense. We recently caught up with John Delaney, the artist from Adventures in the DC Universe, and he basically explained to us that the comics were more or less to try to bring the Timm style cartoons into the main lore of the DC Universe. And so that's why a lot of the times they stuck with what was known from the comics. Sounds familiar. In fact, the merging of these two worlds seems to be made even more clear when looking at Hal's only other appearance in the run, Adventures number 16, which acts as a direct sequel to the 1971 Green Lantern Green Arrow story, Snowbirds Don't Fly. You know, the one where my ward is a junkie? So where do we go from here for answers? Well, a couple months before his appearances in those books, Hal did show up in Batman and Robin Adventures number 17. This comic was a Paul Dini written follow-up to the Mad Hatter's appearances in Batman the Animated Series, which took Batman and Robin to a wax museum on the Gotham riverfront that had been closed down for years. This museum had statues of historical figures like Davy Crockett, Florence Nightingale, the guy off the oatmeal box, and of course superheroes like Superman and Hal Jordan. While we've yet to put together a timeline video for Superman the Animated Series, I'm working on it. We do know from our research into Batman Adventures The Lost Years that Dick Grayson quits as Robin in January of 1997. Even if we want to assume that this story is the last outing of Dick Grayson as Robin before the events of The Lost Years, that would mean that the Wax Museum shut down in January of 1995 at the latest, because once again, it's been closed for years. Even if we could say that Superman debuted by the DCAU's 1995, which seems iffy by the research I've done so far, according to Wonderopolis.org, it takes at least 350 hours to make a wax statue. Accounting for 8-hour workdays and then factoring in weekends off, this makes at least 8 weeks worth of work before these statues would be completed. and no matter how you slice it, Superman just doesn't fit into the DCAU's 1994 to base a statue off of. This then raises questions about Hal Jordan's statue as well, seeing as he's around still as a test pilot at least 5 years later in Superman the Animated Series. So overall, the extra info from the comics just leaves us at a dead end this time. But what about the on-screen material? You know, the animated part of the DC animated universe. Well, working backwards from Hal's appearance in Justice League vs. the Fatal Five, the crew does give us this gem on the commentary track.
Definitely, when we get to the Green Lantern Museum later on, people are gonna go, huh? How's that possible? Hal Jordan's never been in the DCAU except for that one time when he was from an alternate universe.
You can win a no prize, though, if you explain it away.
He comes in JLU, doesn't he? He just goes, I'm Hal Jordan, I'm up to speed.
Yeah,
for like
but again,
a moment, and that's it.
alternate timeline, yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as I remember, I don't think Guy Gardner's ever been in our continuity, but... So whatever, I'll let somebody else figure that out.
Well, it was a museum in the future, so
That's true.
it means somewhere between now and then, Hal and Guy
Yep, exactly.
explain themselves why they're in the universe.
And while they may be right with Guy Gardner becoming a Green Lantern later on, I don't think they are with Hal, especially since, as I mentioned before, we saw him as a cameo in the Super Babes restaurant in Batman and Harley Quinn. While we still haven't worked out the timeline for Justice League vs. the Fatal Five yet, one thing is for sure, it is after Justice League Unlimited. According to Bruce Timm,
it does not take place 3 days after the end of Justice League Unlimited. It probably takes place a year or 3 years after the Justice League Unlimited.
and as we've established before, a truckload of evidence actually places Batman and Harley Quinn during the show, specifically between the episodes Divided We Fall and I Am Legion in the fall of 2003. So we know at the very least that Hal is a Green Lantern by that point in time, and has been a Green Lantern long enough that the Super Babes owner thought, yeah, let's put him on the wall. I mean, Captain Marvel is on the wall as well, and we established in a recent Vanishing Point that he likely became a hero between 2001 to 2003. So I guess this doesn't mean that Hal's been a hero for too terribly long. In fact, this is further backed up by his lack of inclusion in The Return. Due to the supposed destruction of Oa, this episode features every Green Lantern we've seen on screen up until this point, and then some. Well, except for Cairo, but he's in the future. And Abin Sur, but he's dead. I guess Gallius Zed and Arcus Chummock aren't there either, cause maybe they're dead?
That is Barir Watt, not Arcus Chummock.
Thank you, Eric. Very cool. Honestly though, the only lanterns that should be active in this time period that we don't see are Hal Jordan and this little cricket guy who showed up in the background of In Brightest Day. But I mean, what's a bug gonna do to stop a Mazo anyway?
There's a bug!
In your salad?
Sure, it's safe to assume that there are probably still a bunch of lanterns that we don't see because they're out there doing space missions and stuff. But if an all-powerful android wrecks your base of operations and then heads directly to your homeworld, I feel like that's the time that you'd want to kind of show up. In fact, it seems to be heavily implied that at the time, Kyle Rayner was the only Earth Lantern that was off-world.
Wouldn't it be a simple matter for John and Kyle Rayner to trade duties?
Sure, Kyle is the only one standing there at the time, but Jean comes in trying to make a case for John after the Guardians have made their stand clear. So it seems as though if there were any other options, he would probably mention them. So with this episode taking place in late 2002 and Batman and Harley Quinn taking place in late 2003, this gives us about a year to work with in which to place his origin. Of course though, this is all without me even having brought up the biggest piece in this puzzle, Hal's appearance in the Once and Future Thing Part 2. That episode features Batman, Wonder Woman, and Jon Stewart traveling to the future with an unstable timeline constantly making changes to everything around them. Eventually, the timeline changes so much that Jon Stewart momentarily turns into Hal Jordan.
Hal Jordan, another time shift. I'm up to speed. Carry on.
Okay, I'm starting to get a migraine.
Ever since then, it seems like the prevailing fan theory has been that because of the time shift, Hal became a Lantern instead of John. But I'm honestly not so convinced on that. If you'll notice, during that scene, Batman was the only present-day Justice League member left in the group. That's because earlier in the episode, Wonder Woman blinked completely out of existence.
We could even undo the deaths of your friends.
Diana! She never left the island.
or she was never born.
However, oddly enough, when John disappears, Warhawk doesn't, which seems to imply that not only was John still a Green Lantern, but he was also a member of the League still, as it seems unlikely that he would have met Shiera any other way. So from where I'm sitting, it seems like John wasn't replaced as a Green Lantern, but was just replaced as a team member on this mission temporarily. Meaning that in the DCAU continuity, Hal Jordan must have been a Green Lantern by this point, and likely a recent addition to the team as well, or else the introductions with Batman wouldn't have been necessary. So with a window of only a few episodes between his lack of inclusion in The Return and his appearance in the Once and Future Thing, I'm sure you're all wondering now, just what is Hal's origin in the DCAU? Well, just like we did with Shazam last month, why don't we check out the bio on the back of Hal's action figure. Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps' greatest hero, is now available in the sought-after Justice League Unlimited style. Presented as an exclusive holiday gift from your heroes, your replica Green Lantern figure is an exclusive... Wait, that's not a bio. What about his other action figure? While on patrol, Abin Sur was attacked and forced to crash land on the planet Earth. Mortally injured, he commanded his power ring to seek out a fearless and honest Earthman. Without warning, test pilot Hal Jordan was suddenly transported to the crash site of an alien spacecraft. The fallen pilot passed on to Jordan his power ring, lantern, and uniform. Well, that doesn't work either. By the time that this action figure came out, that was Kyle's origin in this universe for 10 years. Why would they even put that on there? Well, what about the Batman and Superman magazine bios? Is there anything in there? Parallax is one of the most powerful villains in the universe. He was previously known as Hal Jordan, a Green Lantern who went insane after his hometown of Coast City, California was destroyed. He was caught in an explosion triggered by Kyle that destroyed the Guardians' home planet of Oa. It is unknown if Parallax is still alive. Well, that's not an origin. And it says on the same page that that incident is when Kyle got his power ring. So that doesn't work in DCAU canon either. Look, at the end of the day, the DCAU really shook up the Green Lantern Corps mythos from what it was in the comics. And as a result, it's hard to say what Hal's origins in this universe actually are. All that we seem to know for sure is that Hal was a Lantern by the time of Batman and Harley Quinn. And while evidence does point to him becoming a Lantern between The Return and the Once and Future Thing, it's hard to say anything with 100% certainty. In the past 2 years, we've gotten 2 DCAU movies that, whether you love them or hate them, added a lot more to this universe and didn't give a lot of explanation. With how much traction this jail reunion hashtag's been getting, it doesn't seem like there's gonna be any slowing down anytime soon either. So maybe we'll get Hal's origins in a new movie, and maybe that'll contradict the art in Batman and Harley Quinn and retcon it into being an artistic representation of Kyle. Or maybe they'll never touch Hal ever again and he'll live on as one of the heroes that we know exist but don't know anything of, such as Plastic Man, Hardware, or the DCAU's version of the Titans. The only thing that I do know for sure is that Hal Jordan being in the DCAU doesn't automatically make Crisis on 2 Earths canon now. If you thought that was the only issue with that movie fitting into this world, you should probably watch our Will It Canon video again. I wonder if that'll get people to stop asking me about it. Now that I've laid this all out for you guys, the question of the day is, where do you think that Hal Jordan fits into the DC animated universe? Does it make sense to you for him to have shown up as a Lantern in between those 2 episodes like I'm theorizing? Or do you have a different headcanon that you'd love to spin? Whatever your answer may be, I'd love to hear it down under in the Australia box. Of course, before I go, I want to thank all of these lovely humans for supporting us on Patreon this month. If you don't see your name on the list and would like it on there, you can go over there to patreon.com/DCAU Watchtower and we'll get it on the list for a pledge of as low as $1. While you're over there, you can also check out the other tiers we've got. We offer a lot of perks such as custom artwork or video hangouts or merch, or even just voting in polls to help us pick one of the episodes. That's how the Justice League vs. Fatal 5 Will It Canon video actually got into existence. We were gonna make it, you guys just wanted us to make it faster, so we did. Also, if you're interested in merch, but don't want to deal with the hassle of being a monthly patron, you can always buy a t-shirt or a hoodie from us at our Teespring store, which I'll get James to leave a link to in the description box below. As always, I've been Maddie Washburn, this has been The Vanishing Point, and we'll continue to stay those things so long as you continue to stay you. I love you. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Unless you're not subscribed, then I'll see you when I see you. But if you want to see me in 2 weeks, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button, hit every button.